Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 12th edition of 2024 edition of the Township of Muskoka Lake Planning Committee meeting. And I call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. I can confirm that we have a full.
Councillor McIntyre in the meeting.
Thank you. So we will have a full quorum when Councillor McIntyre joins us on Zoom. I will also tell you that we have the CAO, Deputy Clerk, and staff members here. We invited public input through the email, the township's email. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. And by participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. We have no supplementary agenda today, and I'll ask committee members if anybody has any pecuniary interests on the 4 applications before us today. Seeing none, I guess we will move to the first application, which is a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment and application, consent application. We actually have 2 of them. So the first one is B 12921 ML and the ZBA 29/24. And Ms. Crowder is going to talk to us about this one.
Thank you, Chair Bosenworth. Good morning, members of committee. The first applications to be heard are concurrent consent application B 12921 ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 29/24 in the name of Lamb. The subject lands are known as 1073 Rosseau Lake Road 1. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent and zoning sketches on pages 23 to 26 of the agenda package. The purpose of consent application B 12921 ML is to create 1 new rural lot. This consent application was originally adjourned by Committee of Adjustment on March 14th, 2022, so that a qualified environmental consultant could confirm the presence of a wetland on the subject lands and for the completion of a satisfactory scoped environmental impact study demonstrating that the severed lot could be developed for residential purposes without negatively impacting natural heritage features and functions, and for the identification of appropriate zoning for the subject lands. Since the time of adjournment, a scoped environmental impact study has been submitted by Michalski Nielsen Associates Limited. The purpose and effect of zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 29/24 is to rezone a portion of the newly created lot to environmental protection EP1 per recommendation of the scoped EIS. Another recommendation made within the scoped EIS is to require a setback of 49.2 feet from the boundary of the wetland to building and septic envelopes on the severed lot. Staff recommend that a revision be made to the bylaw to implement this recommendation. The recommendations of the scoped EIS are specific to the severed lot. However, the wetland extends beyond the severed lot onto part of the retained lot as depicted in the photo displayed on the screen. To ensure that the natural heritage features and its functions are protected, staff recommend that the draft bylaw be revised to rezone the wetland feature on the retained lot from rural residential hamlet to environmental protection EP1 and as shown in the extent and location on the screen. This is staff's markup drawn based upon aerial photo interpretation of vegetational communities and familiarity with the property. The lands outlined in red are suggested to remain RURH, and the lands highlighted in green are recommended to be rezoned to EP1. This figure would form a schedule to the draft bylaw. Further, to match the recommendation put forth on the severed lot, staff recommend that a setback of 49.2 feet be imposed from the boundary of the wetland to septic and building envelopes on the retained lot. Staff recommend that a revision be made to the bylaw to implement this recommendation. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 22 days in advance of this meeting, and 4 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from Cassie Ems, planner at the District Municipality of Muskoka, stating that district staff would not be opposed to the approval of the applications, provided that the recommended mitigation measures outlined in the scoped environmental impact study prepared by Mikalski Nielsen Associates Limited, dated July 29th, 2024, are implemented. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, Manager of Operational Services, stating that severance approval should be subject to confirmation from the Township's Operational Services Department of availability of an entrance permit for the severed lot. Lastly, comments were received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, stating that the calculated fire response time is 18 minutes and 41 seconds based on the average shoot time of the fire department in the last 36 months and a travel distance of 9 kilometers from the fire station. This response time is outside of the NFPA Rural Response Time objective of 14 minutes. When response time is outside of the Rural Response Time objective, it is prudent to subject developments to additional design requirements beyond the minimum in the building code, potentially including fire sprinklers, increased spatial separations, and building materials of higher fire resistance ratings. As construction will be occurring on the property, we encourage pre-planning with the fire department concerning fire risks during this vulnerable phase of development. The Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended the following. That consent application B-12921ML Lamb be approved subject to standard conditions of consent, that the owners enter into a consent agreement with the township to implement the recommendations of the scoped EIS, that the severed lot be made subject to site plan control, and that part of the severed lot and part of the retained lot be rezoned to environmental protection EP1. Staff have further recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 2924 Lamb be approved subject to revisions to the bylaw to rezone a wetland on part of the retained lot to environmental protection EP1 and to require a setback of 49.2 feet from the boundaries of a wetland to building and septic envelopes on the severed and retained lots. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowder. The applicants, is the applicant or their agent here wishing to speak? Yes, sir. If you could come up to the podium. If you'd like to say something, and you give us your name, address, and you've got 5 minutes.
It's good to go. Yeah, Jeremy Lamb's my name. 1073 Rosseau Lake Road 1, Utterson, Ontario. And yeah, what Ms. Crowder has just said, I've conducted my due diligence to have this looked at. And there's a beautiful building envelope on that property. And I understand that the front is a lower laying area. There is already an entrance into it. So it would require a culvert and probably some obviously gravel to get into the building envelope. There actually is a dug well from the original people that owned it, like from 50 years ago, that I know is good potable water. So that's an asset to the property, I believe. My idea is I just like to sever it and sell it and then use the income from that to put against what I've started, because I'm still with private money right now. I'm just, I work for myself, right? So I'm having a hard time getting a bank to look at me, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, you don't make no money. But anyways, I've been doing it for 3 years.
Good.
So yeah, it's a good building envelope. There's lots of potential to the property. And like the setback for the what you're saying, the 49 feet from the road, right? That's what you presented?
Ms. Crowder?
For the environmental protected part?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth, the recommended setback is from the EP1 zone. So it is not from the road, it is
Okay.
from the zone.
From the zone, right? So that zone there, though, there's quite a bit of property that can be developed on for septic and for a house to be built. And I believe somebody will purchase it and build a new home. And that, to me, it's just beneficial for the township as well, because I'm dividing that property So someone builds a nice home on it, and I already have my home built on that land, so it's really gonna double the taxes from that land. And it's a nice area. It's in a hamlet. It actually originally was all farmland at one time. I've talked to some of the older generations that grew up in the area, and that was all cattle pasture at one time. And the farmers had trenched it, and because all the water comes off the ridge at the back, so it just wasn't used. So the growth come up, and obviously the water got in low lying areas. So like when I put my house on the land, there was you could smell the manure when I was digging, right? To put my property in when I built the house. So yeah, I agree with what the township's saying. That's completely fine. Sure, the front part maybe should be environmentally protected, and then someone could go in and develop on the back part of that lot. So
Okay, well, thank you very much. Do we have anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this application? And do we have anybody wishing to speak against it? Very well. So let me ask committee, do we have any questions of the applicant or Ms. Crowder? Seeing none. We got a couple of resolutions here. The first one is moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to the Township Council that consent application B 129/21 ML be approved, subject to the following conditions: that a satisfactory registrable description of the severed lot, together with any required rights of way or easements, be submitted to the township, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The confirmation be received that the township is satisfied that the severed and retained lots are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal, and that any problems identified with any existing sewage system be corrected to the satisfaction of the township. That the availability of an entrance permit be confirmed by the township's operational services department for the severed lot. The cash in lieu of parkland be dedicated to the township in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the severed lot or the entire lands, whichever is less. That the owners enter into a consent agreement with the township pursuant to section 51(26) of the Planning Act. Said agreement shall be registered against the title of the lands and contain provisions to the satisfaction of the township whereby the owner agrees to implement the recommendations of the scoped environmental impact study prepared by Michalski Nielsen Associates Limited, dated July 29th, 2024. That the severed lot be made subject to site plan control to implement the recommendations of the scoped environmental impact study prepared by Michalski Nielsen Associated Limited, dated July 29th, 2024, and that part of the severed lot and part of the retained lot be rezoned to environmental protection EP1. Any discussion on the resolution? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Carried. The second resolution is moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 29/24 be approved, subject to the following: that a revision be made to the bylaw to rezone a wetland on part of the retained lot to environmental protection EP1, and that revision be made to the bylaw to require a 15-meter (49.2 feet) from the boundaries of a wetland to building and septic envelopes on the severed and retained lots. Any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Lamb, you have your approval in committee, and the next step will be for it to come to council next month. So thank you very much. Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth. So the first step would be the application needs to go to council next month, where a decision would be made. Following a decision, a notice will be sent to the applicant, which would either be a notice of passing or refusal, potentially, depending on what the decision is. At that time, it will provide further details for the applicant.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sharp.
Just maybe for the benefit of the applicant before he
Mr. Lamb?
leaves, I just wanted to clarify one point. Today's meeting was essentially a recommendation from planning committee to council.
Yeah.
Today's recommendation will be ratified next month, just so you're aware. And as Ms. Crowder pointed out, notice of decision and notice of passing will be mailed out to you.
Yeah.
And there'll be a number of conditions. And our committee of adjustment coordinator, her name's Chelsea Ward. You'd work closely with her to fulfill those conditions, and you'd have 2 years to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
The sooner the better for me.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Very good. Our next application and consent application and zoning bylaw is B 25/26/24 ML and ZBA 32/24. And this again is Ms. Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Bosenworth. The next applications to be heard are concurrent consent application B 25/26/24 ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 32/24 in the name of Donald. The subject lands are known municipally as 1685 Beatrice Townline Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent and zoning sketch on page 76 of the agenda package. The purpose of consent applications B 25/26/24 ML is to create 2 new rural lots. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 32/24 is to gain exemptions necessary to finalize the proposed consents. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 22 days in advance of this meeting, and 4 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, and Cassie Ems, planner at the district municipality of Muskoka, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, manager of operational services, stating that the road allowance of Beatrice Townline Road is standard width of 20 meters. However, at 2 locations along the frontage of the subject property, the township road allowance comes to a 90-degree approximate corner. The first location is at the southernmost intersection of the road allowances labeled Beatrice Townline Road and original road allowance between lots 15 and 16. The second location is the intersection of the road allowances labeled original road allowance between lots 15 and 16 and original road allowance between the townships of Monk and Watt. In both locations, the township road has a substandard curve and does not have property available for a future curve realignment to improve safety. Further, due to the current configuration of the road and road allowance property in these locations, there is insufficient space for road drainage infrastructure and clear zone setbacks on the east side of the road. To provide sufficient road allowance to meet current and future operational needs at these 2 locations, Operational Services requests the property be conveyed to the township as a condition of approval on this application. The extent of the widening will be based on property required for future realignment needs, but is generally described as no more than 25 meters from the current center line of the road along the frontage of the road adjacent to these 2 curves. Lastly, comments were received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, stating that the calculated fire response time is 20 minutes and 46 seconds based on the average shoot time of the fire department in the last 36 months and a travel distance of 8.1 kilometers from the fire station. This response time is outside of the NFPA rural response time objective of 14 minutes. When response is outside of the rural response time objective, it is prudent to subject developments to additional design requirements beyond the minimum in the building code, potentially including fire sprinklers, increased spatial separations, and building materials of higher fire resistance ratings. As construction will be occurring on the property, we encourage pre-planning with the fire department concerning fire risks during this vulnerable phase of development. The Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. During staff's site visit, characteristics synonymous with that of a wetland were observed on severed Lot 2 in consent application B2624ML. A review of aerial photography supports this observation. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. Given the importance of natural heritage features and their functions, staff recommend that consent applications B252624ML Donald and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3224 Donald be deferred until such time as a satisfactory scoped environmental impact study is prepared by a qualified environmental professional, which demonstrates that a development envelope is available on severed Lot 2 in application B2624ML that will not have negative impacts on any natural heritage features or their ecological functions. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowder. Does the owner or the applicant's agent wish to speak? Oh, yeah. Sorry, what's his name?
Zach Allison.
Good morning, Mr. Allison. If you could state your name and address, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Zachary Allison, 1615 Beatrice Townline Road, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L 1H5. Thank you, Chair Bosworth Committee, Ms. Crowder, for your time today. We weren't surprised, Mr. Donald and myself, when committee or staff had suggested that they would like to see an environmental study completed. We have kind of proactively engaged with Al Shaw at Riverstone. He's already been to the property. We have defined the wetland boundary area with him and his wetland biologist. He is completing right now the drafting work in order to have that those boundaries placed on our site plan as part of our approval package. He's also suggested that he will be asking for a 30-meter wetland buffer from that boundary area, with the exception of the maintenance and upgrading of an existing farm road that's in that buffer area. We don't have an issue with that. We want to obviously respect the environmental heritage of the area and develop that appropriately. I should have in hand for October's meeting an assessment from Al, as well as the updated site plan that shows the setback from the wetland area that we're willing to abide by. The one issue I just wanted to chat about quickly that came up that I didn't catch on my review was the curve realignment on that lot number 2, where the property meets at a 90-degree angle to the road allowance, which would be lot number 2 southwest corner, where it meets the road allowance between concessions 12 and 13. That's the area that goes through the marsh there. And so I would just put forward that I don't think we need to worry about taking road area to increase drainage in a curve, because it is a wetland and there'll never be a road developed through there. Understanding that the lot number 1, severed lot number 1 at the north end of the property, I could understand that is a really sharp corner. We just want to understand, I think, completely before we enter into an agreement what that land would look like. I'm not sure that 25 meters from the center line would work to make an appropriate curve there if they do intend on straightening that road. So I think we just need to know, I guess, with surveying, understanding how much area is going to be sacrificed and what roads would deem appropriate in that situation. We're happy to work with the town on that, but I think obviously before we entered into the agreement, we'd like to know what that's going to entail.
Thank you very much. So if I can net that out, you are happy with the deferral until those items can be cleared up. Is that the way I read your comments?
That's correct, sir. We'd be ready to present again in October's meeting if it suits your schedule, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll just finish through, see if everybody do we have anybody else wishing to speak in support of this application? One person, thank you. If you could bring them in.
Morning, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, but we can't see you yet.
Okay, I'm working on it. Stand by, sorry. There we go. So
Great.
I apologize. It says Beatrice Kovacs. That's my wife's name. My name is Chris Anderson. I live at 16, actually it's my cottage property at 1663 Beatrice Townline. When you look at the site plan there for Severed Land 1, there's a little white section in the bottom southwest corner that is my property. I have a little bit of concern regarding the 33-foot section of this land that runs right beside my house and garage. I'm curious as to why the severed portion of land would butt that 33-foot that joins Beatrice Townline there on the south side of Severed Land 1. I don't know whether the intention is to put a road there that'll be 4 feet from my house to access this property, but that gives us a little bit of concern as to the plan as to what's going to be developed in that location. Thank you.
Ms. Crowder, would you be able to address that?
Through you, Chair Bosemarth, I think I'll defer to the applicant. I don't know why that configuration is the way it is.
All right.
Chair Bosworth,
Chair Ellison?
Chair Bosworth, the reason for that piece of land there was to achieve the minimum lot size. There was a natural environmental feature on the existing land that the landowner, Mr. Donald, wanted to retain. And so there's a bit of an irregular shape to the lot to achieve that retention of land. And in order to have the minimum 5 acres to sever the property, we needed to include that 30-meter strip. It's my understanding from citing the property that roads would not allow us to put a driveway there. There aren't sufficient sight lines. So there shouldn't be a concern for Mr. Anderson of there being a driveway in that location. And it's my understanding that there would not be sufficient setbacks in that area to have any structure either. So it's a non-developable piece of land that was just needed to be added on as to complete the area.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Sorry, what was his name? Mr.
Allison.
The
The delegates, Mr. Kovac. Oh, Anderson.
Mr. Anderson. Sorry, I can't see your name on the screen. I'm too far away.
Yes, I apologize.
So Mr. Anderson, that I think that's your answer. And have you any other comments?
Yeah, I'm just curious why they wouldn't utilize some of the land behind my property. There's a 90-degree corner in the proposed severed land to make up the 5 acres. There's a cutout there. If you look at the site plan, I don't know if you have the ability to put that up on the screen there, but you know, they could have made up the 5 acres by taking a piece of the property directly east of my property out the back, instead of that 33 feet beside my property out to the road. It just, it worries me that that piece is there, and that, I'm going to end up with some sort of an access way, again, 4 to 10 feet from the side of my house, with that little sliver of 33 feet there requested to be sold for development.
Ms. Crowder, have you got some comments on this?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth. When it comes to lot configuration, I think the township tries to avoid irregular lot configurations. That being said, there isn't strong policy in our official plan or zoning bylaw to prohibit a lot configuration of this kind. That being said, if committee is uncomfortable with the lot configuration, staff is recommending the application be deferred. And if committee were in agreement with that, I believe you would have the authority to say that you would like to see the configuration adjusted as well, if that's something committee wanted to do.
Thank you very much. Right, well, the applicant's agent, could you, Allison, could
Chair Bosworth, just to reiterate, that piece of land was shaped that way irregularly to avoid a natural feature on the property. So the land to the east of Mr. Anderson's property, that rectangle that's missing from there was specifically created to avoid a natural spring, because the landowner did not want to have development near that spring, which I also support. He wanted to have that remaining on his property. That 30-foot, 33 or 30-foot strip of land, as I indicated, I think Rhodes or someone within the town could confirm that an entrance would not be approved there. You can't have a second entrance on a residential property onto a municipal road. So there's no way another entrance would be placed there. And we could ask maybe Nick, I don't think there's a building that could be built within that envelope to meet the setbacks from both side yards. So I don't think there's any concern for Mr. Anderson that there's a development risk on that strip of land, and it was done consciously to respect the environment, really. Like, that's why it was there. It's to keep, I'm the neighbor of this property also. I abut the property that we're proposing to sever. So I have everything in my best interest to make sure that the land's being looked after and it's being done responsibly.
Thank you very much. Mr. Anderson, do you have any other points you'd like to make? Otherwise, I think we will move on.
No, that was my concern, obviously, in seeing this, and I think all in presence here can understand why I would be concerned with that 33-foot section of land there, with the possibility of either a road or something being put in there, which would obviously devalue my property immensely. With my deck out there and all the windows of my house that currently look out at a beautiful farm field and barn and everything, to have some sort of development on that 3-foot strip of land really concerned us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note that it looks like we're into a deferral, so we can certainly, I think staff have taken note of Mr. Kovac's concerns, and we can work with Mr. Allison and Mr. Donald to come up with perhaps a different configuration of a lot, or we can work through those details to see if there's some solutions that may be amenable to staff. So I just wanted to put that out there.
All right.
And also, since I am speaking, I just wanted to address one of Mr. Allison's comments with respect to the recommended road widenings. The condition that's been put forward is worded specifically to be a bit general or flexible. And if he had specific questions about what that process would look like going forward, we'd recommend that he reach out to Tim Sopko, our manager of operational services.
Okay.
Staff can be involved in that conversation as well as part of the deferral. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? If not, I'll open it up to questions. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right. Where are we? Yes. Committee, do we have any questions of the applicant or staff? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much. It is an odd configuration, but if it can't be jigged in that, could we put a restriction on there's no entrances on the 33-foot wide? Would the owner and the township agree with that? Thank you.
Ms. Crowder or Mr. Sharp?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth, I heard a bit about the entrance and a bit about concern about structures on that portion of the property. The zoning of the property would mean that the required setback from either of the lot lines of that 30-foot sector for any structure or building would be 20 feet. If it's a 30-foot wide piece of land, then no structures would meet that setback on either side. So that would essentially prohibit any buildings or structures from going in that strip. As far as the entrance, I am not a public works expert, so I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe that an entrance permit could be issued there. I think that it has to have certain setbacks from lot lines. But I don't see anybody jumping up to correct me, so I think that's the case, and I don't think that we would need to worry about an entrance being issued for there.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Edwards, supplemental?
Supplemental. I guess what I ask is, could we put that as a condition that there could be no entrance way on that 33-foot wide piece?
Ms. Crowder, could we put that condition?
Through you, Chair. I'm just trying to sort out, because I know in a zoning bylaw, you could put exemptions that are specific to zoning. I think I'm going to defer to Mr. Sharp.
Well, the other thing I would suggest is this is an open question and this is going to be deferred. So I think that answer could be properly researched and the answer brought back, and certainly the consideration be kept in mind by staff. All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, and through you to Mr. Sharp. Could you just background for me, explain what the philosophy of this maximum number of lots permitted to be created by consent? I know we're asking for a change from that in this, but what's the history of the rule? Is it to keep creeping development from happening on a property, like 2 lots this year and next year 2 more lots, and then 5 years from now 2 more lots? It's a history point for me, so I understand why the exemption is being required.
Ms. Crowder or Mr. Sharp, who would who's
Mr.
got
Sharp,
the better
whoever was it.
history on this? Ms. Crowder?
It's not specific to this property, specific to it's really a policy matter.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Kent, I can do my best to answer the question, and then if Mr. Sharp wants to jump in. My understanding is that the zoning of the property is RU3, which is an agricultural rural zone. And the intent of the restriction on the number of lots is to ensure that the larger pieces of agricultural land remain intact. So it's to prohibit many consent applications, which would take pieces out of those rural agricultural lands. So the intent is to maintain those larger pastoral properties, hence the restriction on the number of lots that could be created. I believe that I should note that through the official plan process, there were a number of areas that were identified as local agricultural areas, and there are policies specific to those properties moving forward with the new official plan. This property is not an identified local agricultural area, so it would not be subject to those policies. I think that the intent was to capture the large sections of agricultural area back to back. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
That is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did we have another question on this side? I don't think so. All right. Thank you, Councillor Burry. No, we'll do that. Moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommended Township Council the consent application B2526/24 ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 32/24 be deferred until such time as a satisfactory scoped environmental impact study is prepared by a qualified environmental professional, which demonstrates that a development envelope is available on severed lot 2 in application B/26/24 ML that will not have negative impacts on any natural heritage features or the ecological functions. Committee, is there any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Very well. Okay, the next one is a zoning bylaw amendment application. It is ZBA 33/24, and I believe this is Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Bosworth. The next application to be heard is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3324 in the name of Wilson. The subject lands are known municipally as 1019 Old Bridge Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted zoning sketch on page 100 of the agenda package. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3324 is to permit the construction of a two-story boathouse on a lot with less than 300 feet of frontage. The requested exemption is summarized in Table 1 of the staff report that was included in the circulation materials and seeks to permit the development of a two-story boathouse on a lot with less than 300 feet of frontage. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 21 days in advance of this meeting, and 7 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, Tim Sopko, the township's manager of public works, and Cassie Ems, planner at the district municipality of Muskoka, all stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, stating the calculated fire response time, encouraging pre-planning with the fire department concerning fire risk during development, and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. A letter of opposition was received from Janet Amos and David Bacon, residents of 1011 Old Bridge Road, stating concerns with impacts to views, increased noise levels, impacts to lake quality, and concerns with a lack of information included in the application. A letter of opposition was also received from Stephanie and Wayne Nichols, residents of the abutting easterly property, 1017 Old Bridge Road. This letter states concerns with the site plan not including the location of a second garage on the property, or including a proposed location for the boathouse, and concerns with potential site alterations and septic changes. A letter was received from the property owners after the circulation of comments to committee. They have requested that these comments be read, which I will do. The letter reads, I would like to introduce ourselves. My husband Grant and I were thrilled last summer when the property at 1019 Old Bridge Road became available and we were able to purchase it. We had been looking to buy a cottage in Muskoka for a long time. The property is in a beautiful natural setting, which we are wanting to preserve. We were attracted to the level lot. As we age, this is an important feature, and the private, quiet setting. We have no desire to lose any of that. The cottage, docks, and boathouse are in need of updating, and as budget permits, we will attempt to do this over the next several years. We brought an architect to the property and challenged them to figure out a design that will blend into the rock wall. We are disappointed by the objections raised. We inherited a garage from the past owners that appears to have been used in part as a bunkie. We do not use it for anything other than storage. We don't understand how the existing garage impacts building new docks and a boathouse. We do not think that anything in our application indicates that there would be any blasting. There is no need for that. As for noise impacts, we are not clear what difference there would be if we rebuilt a one-story boathouse with a flat roof versus a two-story with an enclosed sleeping cabin. Our current plan is to obtain the necessary permissions to build a boathouse with accommodations, but we will not be building it at this time. We would, however, like to take the first step to obtain appropriate zoning and build the docks so that we can have proper docking for the watercraft. We would like to reinforce that we respect the current landscape. We feel fortunate to have such a private lot and we enjoy views of the water. Thank you for considering our application. Grant and Leslie Wilson, 1019 Old Bridge Road. Next slide, please. Please be advised that the applicant's agent has recently provided an updated zoning sketch as shown on the screen, showing the location of a second garage that was not indicated on the original site plan that was previously circulated. It's kind of small, but it's located along Old Bridge Road on the northern edge of the property. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved, subject to a revision to remove schedules 2 and 3 from the draft bylaw, and that the proposed development be made subject to site plan control. Staff would note that if committee is considering including Schedule 2 in the draft bylaw, it is recommended that the bylaw be revised to update Schedule 2 to the recently provided zoning sketch showing the location of the second garage. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. The applicant agent, I believe, is Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen, good morning.
Yes,
And
good
as
morning.
always,
Thank you. Nice to see you.
you have 5 minutes.
Great. I'm assisting the Wilson family today with their proposed zoning amendment application at 1019 Old Bridge Road on Lake Rosseau. Ms. Wilson had a medical appointment today and could not attend, so thank you, Ms. Beamish, for reading her letter aloud. She will have appreciated that. I'd like to acknowledge, too, that Jillian Schneider, who's a master's student at Queen's University, assisted with the preparation of this application. This was one of her first applications. I wanted to recognize her contribution today because she was in class and could not attend. We also want to acknowledge the comments and from staff and neighbors related to the existing one-story garage that's missing from the plan. Its absence was not intentional and was simply missed. It does not impact the application. We apologize for any confusion that is caused. I do have some slides that I'd like to share. Ms. Beamish, if you could cue those up. She's already shared the first one, which is the revised site plan that we provided, showing the existing one-car garage that's located along Old Bridge Road. There's also an existing dwelling, a 2-story garage, 1-story boathouse and dock located on the property. You'll see some purple lines extending into the lake from the lot lines. Those are the minimum 2-story setback requirements for a boathouse. You'll see there's lots of area between those setbacks that would be permitted a boathouse. The existing 2-car garage, that's beside the dwelling was permitted through a previous variance application. The property is 297.5 feet of frontage and 3.5 acres of lot area. As Ms. Beamish explained, the proposed application is to permit a 2-story boathouse on the existing lot frontage. Next slide, please. A survey has been completed previously of the property, and John Hiley, a land surveyor, has confirmed the lot frontage. Next slide, please. This is an air photo showing the subject property. You'll see that the subject property is the largest and most well forested compared to all of the surrounding neighboring lots. Next slide, please. This is an excerpt from the 2013 and 2023 official plans. In my opinion, the reason for this application is due to the disconnect between the minimum 90-meter frontage requirement for a 2-story boathouse in the official plan and the minimum requirement of 91.4 meters in the zoning bylaw. The township has historically preferred to use the imperial measurements instead of metric measurements. And in my opinion, this disconnect has been created by a rounding of these imperial measurements to whole numbers, such as rounding 90 meters of frontage or 90 meters to 300 feet, where 300 feet is actually 295.2 feet. I note that the metric system is the only legal measurement system in Canada, and the official plan clearly directs the use of metric numbers. Imperial numbers are included, but they're only to be used for reference purposes. The lot frontage of the property exceeds the policy requirement by 0.6 meters and conforms with the official plan, but is deficient by zoning by 2.5 feet or 76 centimeters. I expect that the zoning bylaw will be updated in the future to include a 90-meter minimum requirement, which implements the official plan policy. And a point of clarification, the application was originally submitted simply to permit a 2-story boathouse on the existing frontage. The boathouse plans submitted were only for informational purposes and were simply attached to and circulated with the bylaw. There are no specific building plans at this time, and those plans are simply conceptual. We agree with the neighbors' comments and requests that the boathouse plans should be removed from the proposed bylaw and request that the committee make this amendment to the application. In conclusion, this matter in front of the committee is simply related to a two-story boathouse on the existing frontage. The lot has the appropriate waterfront residential zoning. It is not located in a narrow water body. The frontage does not contain any critical fish habitat, and the frontage is only deficient by zoning by 76 centimeters. The future dock and boathouse will comply with the requirements of the bylaw, setbacks, coverage, heights, and length. In my professional opinion, the application conforms with the township and district official plans. This is consistent with the provincial policy statement, represents good planning, and we request today that the committee recommend approval of this application. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Do we have anybody in the room who is wishing to speak in favor of the application? And do we have anybody wishing to speak against the application? Very well. We'll turn it over to committee for questions to the applicant, agents, and staff. Do we have any committee, any questions? Very well. I have some questions for Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen, when you write your reports, I read your report, as I often do. And I was wondering if when you are writing your reports, do you consider all attributes of our official plan and bylaw that you think are relevant to the case?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, we do consider the entire official plan. However, in order to keep the reports somewhat tight and brief, we refer to specifically the most relevant or salient policies are included in the planning justification.
And would you agree that our official plan and bylaws have extensive reference to vegetation along the shorelines?
Yes, they do.
50-foot
There's numerous policies that speak to shoreline buffering and vegetation along the shorelines.
And my understanding was our plans that it says when there is redevelopment of a property for things that are out of compliance, we should do our best effort to bring them into compliance. Is that a fair description of what our bylaws and official plans would say?
It's what your official plan says, I agree, but that's not what is occurring here. There is no redevelopment proposed. There is development that is proposed. So that policy that you're referring to speaks to improvements being made where redevelopment occurs. For example, an existing cottage that is close to the shoreline that's being redeveloped, removed, and reconstructed. The application in front of you does not have a specific development plan. It is simply to allow a two-story boathouse on the existing frontage.
Very
There
well.
is no redevelopment proposed.
I understand, but there is development proposed.
There is development proposed, yes.
And so what I'm getting at is by the pictures, I think there was 2 pictures of the shoreline show what looked to me extensive areas of the shoreline that are basically lawn to the shoreline. And I was wondering, I think you're well aware that this township is considers the protection of the shoreline, and that 50-foot buffer is very important to us. And every time we have an opportunity, we ask for plantings. But your opinion on it was, apart from this development area surrounded apart from this developed area and area surrounding the dwelling, the site is extensively forested, naturally vegetated. What do you think, based on those pictures, that our committee might draw a conclusion based on those 2 pictures that show extensive lawn down to the shoreline?
I would agree that there is lawn area that does extend to the shoreline. There are a few trees between the existing dwelling and the shoreline. The township's goal is to have a 50-foot vegetated shoreline buffer that is naturally vegetated. Also, the official plan policies also recognize that there are many existing lots that do not have that vegetative buffer. Policies direct, as redevelopment occurs, that efforts should be put forward to enhance the buffer and make improvements where possible. I have had an opportunity to discuss with the Wilson family extensively improvements that could be made to their shoreline. One of the first points that we brought up with them was the extensive lawn area to the water's edge, and how that type of landscaping is not necessarily compatible with the goal and the vision that the township has for the waterfront. Ms. Wilson was amenable to making improvements and enhancements to the shoreline to help meet some of the township's goals and bring the property into closer compliance with that 15-meter buffer.
Then my final question would be, would it not be more appropriate for you to put that recommendation into your professional report?
It could have been. In my professional opinion, the application was simply related to a very small deficiency in frontage. If this application had been made prior to the update of after the update of the zoning bylaw, which foreseeably will include the 90-meter frontage requirement, this lot would comply and simply would need a building permit. Would I recommend that it needs to be subject to site plan control to undertake revegetation of the shoreline? And in my opinion, it doesn't. Could enhancements be made through education and discussions with the owner? Absolutely.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any other questions of committee? Councillor Kent.
Thank you. And through you, I guess, given where you're going with this, I don't understand. We've pulled the boathouse design, which I think has, based on those pictures, I understand they're not relevant, have a lot of issues, out of this application. But I would think that the boathouse design, where it sits on the site, how it deals with your lack of growth around the shoreline would all be relevant to saying no problem with the 3 feet. I mean, I can't see a big issue with the 3 feet, but I do think it depends on where the boathouse goes, the size of the boathouse, because right now it's out of policy, in my opinion, based on the numbers, but it's very hard to read. So I would think this needs to be a comprehensive approval rather than they're going to take the boathouse back and get permission from the building department. And that's really just a question for both Mr. Sharp or Emily Crowder or you, Rob. Just we're pulling it out, and that concerns me a bit because it's going to go to the
Mr. Sharp, would you like to talk about the situation surrounding the boathouse?
Sure, yes, through you, Chair. I think in this instance, as Mr. Allen has pointed out, we're talking about a deficiency of a few feet. I think typically Planning Committee and Council are used to seeing applications that come forward with the development proposal laid out in great detail, along with specific restrictions about the location and size and different other elements related to the proposal that would be locked in through the bylaw. I think in this case, we're comfortable removing the schedules that are in question from the bylaw. And the reason that we're comfortable with that in this case is it's a deficiency of a few feet, but also the 2-story boathouse and the shoreline structures that are going to be developed on this property, if the application is approved, will ultimately have to comply with the township's zoning bylaw. And those detailed drawings will be submitted at the time that a building permit application is filed. Staff in the building department and planning staff work together to review those plans and drawings against the township's zoning bylaw prior to the issuance of a building permit, as is required to be done under the building code. So I think we're satisfied in this case, not having the level of detail that we would normally have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There was another question, I believe, on this side, Councillor Nishikawa.
Well, just the way the conversations were going through you, I was getting a little uncomfortable because I thought this was a pretty straightforward application. And basically my question would be, so this will not be site plan controlled?
Mr. Sharp?
Through you, Chair. I think respectfully, I think staff's opinion may be different than Mr. Allen's. I think the bylaw that is in front of, the site plan control bylaw that will be brought forward subjecting the two-story boathouse to site plan control. As noted in our report, part of the intent of that would be to achieve some revegetation along the shoreline. And it sounds, based on Mr. Allen's comments, that his client would be amenable to doing some plantings. I think the difference would be that in this case, we'd be looking to have those plantings enshrined through a site plan agreement with securities. So I just wanted to put that out there for clarity, that staff would be looking for some plantings as part of that process, and that's part of the intent. Thank you.
Councilor Chikala.
Well, thank you. And I will say, though, that in the conversation, some of the things that it sounded like we were going to expect come forward early on are very difficult to get early on. Very difficult, and in fact can cost many thousands of dollars just to get drawings done. So I'm happy with this application the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions before I read the resolutions? All right, the resolution, I should say. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommends Township Council the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 33/24 be approved, subject to the following condition: that the draft bylaw be revised to remove Schedule 2 and 3, and that proposed development be made subject to site plan control. Committee, do we have any discussion on this? Seeing none, I call all those in favor. Any opposed? Thank you, that carries.
Thank you, committee. The Wilsons will be very happy.
Right, we have committee, do we need a break? We don't normally break till 10:30.
Yes. 5 minutes.
We have one more to go.
Yeah, you guys want to do the heavy lifting after break.
All right, 10 after. Is that enough? Okay.
You're better than
Roberts, please.
Oh, sorry.
If, are we back online? We are. Okay, very well. We're calling this meeting back to order at whatever it is, 10:10. Our final application today is ZBA 35/24. And this is Ms. Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Bosenworth. The next application to be heard is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 35/24 in the name of BOWMAN. The subject lands are known municipally as 1434 Barlochan Road, Unit Number 2. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted zoning sketches on pages 135 and 136 of the agenda package. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 35/24 is to demolish an existing dwelling and to construct a new two-story dwelling with a larger footprint. The requested exemptions are summarized in Table 1 of the staff report and were included in the circulation materials. Exemptions A and B seek to permit the development of a dwelling with a front yard setback of 39 feet at the closest point. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 21 days in advance of this meeting, and 6 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Operational Services, and Cassie Ems, Planner at the District Municipality of Muskoka, all stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, stating that the calculated fire response time is 16 minutes and 28 seconds based on the average shoot time of the fire department in the last 36 months and a travel distance of 6.6 kilometers from the fire station. This response time is outside of the NFPA Rural Response Time objective of 14 minutes. When response is outside of the rural response time objective, it is prudent to subject developments to additional design requirements beyond the minimum in the building code, potentially including fire sprinklers, increased spatial separations, and building materials of higher fire resistance ratings. As construction will be occurring on the property, we encourage pre-planning with the fire department concerning fire risks during this vulnerable phase of development. The Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. A letter of support was received from Chris Roy, a budding property owner to the east. He states that he is the husband of the subject property owner and is supportive of the application. Following the circulation of comments to committee, a second letter of support was received from Michael Kutrick, area property owner, expressing support for the proposal. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The applicant's, is the owner, the applicant or the agent here? We see the agent. Mr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Thank you very
Good
much.
morning, Jack Lorenz, Dakota Group, 3 Armstrong Point Road, P0B1J0. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. So as proposed, as Emily stated, the intent is to replace the existing 2-story dwelling with a new, larger 2-story dwelling at the location specified on the site plan. The existing 2-story dwelling has a setback of 30 feet, and we are actually increasing that setback to 39 feet, which is still requires relief as per the zoning bylaw today's standards. The footprint within the 50-foot mark is actually less than what is previously constructed today, which will be demolished, as well as the overall height is going to be reduced from what is there. So the overall impact from the water is actually should be slightly less. That and given the existing vegetation at shoreline within 50 feet, it is very well vegetated. We don't see why there would be any impacts in this with this proposal. The only reason, as stated, for this request for relief is there was a previous zoning bylaw amendment, which unfortunately locked us into the location and extents of the previous dwelling. So in order to construct this dwelling, we needed to revise that zoning bylaw amendment. It also should be noted that this building location has been chosen to minimize site alteration as much as possible. Towards the back of the property, if you're looking at the site plan towards the west, there are a large number of very old large trees, which given this location, we should be preserving a lot of those compared to if we had to move it to the 66-foot setback. Here to answer any questions that committee may have, and appreciate your time today. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your succinct report, Mr. Lorenz. Do we have anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anybody in opposition? Seeing none, let me turn it over to the committee for questions of the applicant or the applicant's agent or our staff. Right. I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zabitz. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommended Township Council that zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 35/24 BOWMAN be approved. Any comments from committee? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. That's carried.
Thank you for your time.
CAO Pink, do we have any update on Ontario Land Tribunals that you'd like to tell us about?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, through you, I can advise that the 4 Ontario Land Tribunal appeals to our official plan, the second case management conference was heard yesterday. I can't recall the exact date off the top of my head, but I believe the first case management conference was much earlier in the year, around March. The tribunal, after the first case management conference, directed that a procedural order and issues list be prepared prior to yesterday's hearing. Unfortunately, the appellants did not prepare said issues list until I believe it was very late the day before. And I think the chair member yesterday referred to them as essentially a skeleton of an issues list. And a new third now case management conference has been scheduled in January, early in the new year, to hear an unfortunate delay and somewhat inefficient process, in my opinion. But unfortunately, those tasks were not completed and the process continues. I can also advise that the township is pursuing a motion. It's to be heard on October 30th of this year to determine the validity of the 4 appeals given changes to the Provincial Planning Act through Bill 185. So hopefully we will hear the results of that motion well before the January CMC, and that should expedite the process, hopefully moving forward. In addition to that, I think a number of other municipalities have advanced similar motions, and the tribunal is wrestling with those. So the issue may even be resolved before our motion on October 30th. If I believe there's an identical essentially case being heard, I believe in the London area sometime in later this month. And if the outcome of that is what we expect, then that may avoid the need for our motion to be heard on October 30th. So happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions from committee for CAO Pink? I have one. Did all 4 appellants come back with a skeleton of a issues list, or were there anyone in particular?
Thank you. Through you, I'm reaching out to our solicitor to get copies. I believe I did receive personally the appellant Our Muskoka's issues list. I have yet to receive the others in the name of Miller, Lipa, and Ballard Carr. Actually might put Mr. Sharp on the spot. He attended in my absence yesterday, but I believe they did all quite late before the CMC did submit their issues list. But again, they were quite high level.
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I can't recall specifically which appellant submitted issues lists. I do know that Lipa and Miller and our Muskoka did submit issues lists that I know for sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, CAO Pink. All right, we have one motion, one resolution left, I think. There's nothing else on the agenda. Very good. Moved by Councillor Mazin. Seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the planning committee meeting adjourn at 10:20 a.m. and that the next regular planning committee meeting will be held on Thursday, October the 17th, 2024 at 9 a.m. by an electronically and in-person hybrid format from the council chambers, municipal offices in Port Carling, Ontario. And the assumption there's no discussion on this. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Carried. Yourself, it's